I stood there, clutching my white coat from the pre-med ceremony, watching the letter float to the ground between plates of half-eaten pasta and breadsticks. My mother sat silently at one of the tables, tears streaming down her face, while my younger sister Olivia watched from behind the counter, her expression unreadable. My name is Sofia Martinez, and at 22, I was being disowned for choosing medicine over marinara sauce. Dad, please, I tried one last time. The restaurant will be fine with Olivia. She loves it here. I can help during breaks, but medicine is my calling. Your calling? He spat, his face red with anger. This restaurant has been in our family for 4 generations. Your grandmother worked herself to death to keep it running during the recession. And you want to abandon it for some fancy career? The irony wasn't lost on me. Nana had died of a treatable condition because she refused to see a doctor, choosing instead to put every penny back into the restaurant. That's what had inspired me to pursue medicine in the first place. I'm not abandoning anything, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'm trying to build something more, to help people. Help people? My mother finally spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. We help people every day. Every customer who walks through that door is family. But you're too good for that now, aren't you? Too smart to be just another restaurant owner. The way she said it, like being a doctor was some sort of betrayal, made my heart ache. I looked at Olivia, hoping for support, but she just shook her head slightly. She'd always been the perfect daughter, never questioning, never wanting more than what our parents had planned for us. You have a choice, my father said, his voice cold. Stay and take your rightful place in this family, or leave and never come back. We won't support this foolish dream. I looked around the restaurant, taking in the familiar scents of garlic and basil, the worn checkered tablecloths, the photos of our family spanning 4 generations on the walls. My whole life was here, but so was the memory of Nana, who might still be alive if she had access to proper medical care. I'm going, I said quietly but firmly. I love this restaurant, but I love medicine more. I want to save lives. Then go, my father shouted, pointing to the door. But don't come crawling back when you fail. You're no longer part of this family. I walked out that night with nothing but my pre-med coat, a small backpack of essentials, and my acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins Medical School. The scholarship would cover my tuition, and I'd figure out the rest somehow. As I reached the door, I heard Olivia call out softly, "Sophie, wait." Olivia. My father's sharp voice cut her off. Let her go. She's made her choice. That was 8 years ago. Through medical school, residency, and my fellowship in rare genetic disorders, I never looked back. I threw myself into my studies, working extra shifts to cover living expenses, spending holidays in the hospital rather than facing the emptiness of not having a family to go home to. I kept tabs on them through social media, watching from afar as Olivia took over the restaurant, modernizing the menu while keeping our family's traditional recipes. She got married, had a baby, lived the life our parents had always wanted for both of us. The restaurant thrived under her management, and I was genuinely happy for her success. I became one of the youngest specialists in genetic disorders, focusing particularly on rare conditions affecting the nervous system. My research was published in leading medical journals, and I eventually opened my own practice in Boston, far from our small New Jersey town. Then, last week, everything changed. I was reviewing patient files when my office phone rang. The caller ID showed Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital. Dr. Martinez speaking, I answered, expecting another consultation request. Dr. Martinez, this is Dr. Thompson from Neurology. We have a patient with a suspected case of hereditary sensory and autonomic neuropathy type 8. Given your expertise in this area, I sat up straighter. HSAN8 was incredibly rare, with only a handful of documented cases worldwide. I published several papers on it during my fellowship. The patient's name? I asked, already pulling up my calendar to schedule a consultation. There was a slight pause. The patient is Olivia Martinez Torres. She mentioned you might be familiar with the case. The pen I was holding clattered to the desk. Olivia, my sister. Dr. Martinez, are you there? Yes, I managed to say, my throat tight. Yes, I'm familiar with the case. I'll be there tomorrow morning. After hanging up, I sat in my office, staring at the family photo I kept hidden in my desk drawer. It was taken the day I graduated high school, all of us smiling in front of the restaurant, before everything fell apart, before I chose medicine over marinara. Now, 8 years later, that choice might be the only thing that could save my sister's life. AITA was a devastating condition, progressively attacking the nervous system until the body could no longer regulate basic functions. Without proper treatment, patients typically had less than 2 years from onset of symptoms. The only promising treatment protocol had been developed through research I conducted during my fellowship. I booked a flight to New Jersey for the next morning, packed a small bag, and tried not to think about the fact that I was about to face my family for the first time in 8 years, not as the disgrace of a daughter, but as their only hope. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so heartbreaking. The halls of Princeton Plains Rural Teaching Hospital felt both familiar and strange as I walked toward the neurology department. My white coat, now bearing my name and credentials, felt like armor against what was coming. I spotted them before they saw me, my parents sitting in the waiting area, looking older than I remembered. My father's dark hair was now streaked with gray, and my mother's face bore more lines than I recalled. They were huddled together, looking at something on a phone, probably pictures of Olivia's 2-year-old daughter Isabella, whom I'd only seen in Facebook photos. Dr. Thompson met me at the nurse's station, her expression professional but curious. She clearly picked up on the shared last name. Dr. Martinez, thank you for coming so quickly. The patient is in room 407. Has the family been briefed on the severity of the condition? I asked, accepting Olivia's chart. Only preliminarily. We wanted to wait for your expertise before discussing treatment options. I nodded, scanning the test results. The symptoms were textbook HSA-8, progressive numbness in extremities, autonomic dysfunction, declining motor control. My sister had probably been experiencing symptoms for months before seeking help. Sophia. My mother's voice made me freeze. I turned slowly, facing them for the first time in 8 years. My father stood slightly behind her, his expression unreadable. What are you doing here? He demanded, though his voice lacked the anger I remember from that night. He sounded tired, worried. I'm here as Olivia's doctor. I replied professionally, gripping the chart tighter. I'm the leading specialist in HSA-8. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. You're the doctor they called. Yes, now, if you'll excuse me, I need to examine my patient. I walked past them, feeling their eyes on my back as I entered Olivia's room. She was sitting up in bed, looking pale but alert. Her husband Marco sat beside her, holding her hand. They both looked up as I entered. Sophie. Olivia's voice cracked. You're the specialist? I moved to check her vital signs, falling back on medical training to keep my emotions in check. How long have you been experiencing numbness in your extremities? 6 months, Marco answered when Olivia remained silent. She kept saying it was just stress from running the restaurant. Of course she did. We Martinez women were taught never to show weakness, never to admit when we needed help. I examined her hands, noting the slight tremors, the decreased sensitivity to temperature and pressure. The restaurant. Olivia finally spoke again. Is it why you never came back? Because of what Dad said. I paused in my examination. I never came back because I wasn't welcome. But that's not important right now. What's important is starting you on the treatment protocol immediately. Will it work? Marco asked, squeezing Olivia's hand. The other doctors said this condition is rare, that there aren't many treatment options. There's a protocol I developed during my fellowship, I explained, keeping my voice clinical. It's shown promising results in similar cases, but we need to start immediately, and it's going to be a long process. You developed the treatment? My father's voice came from the doorway. I hadn't heard him come in. All those papers they showed us, the research they talked about, that was you. I turned to face him. Yes, this is what I've been doing while I was dead to you, saving lives. The words came out sharper than I intended, and I saw him flinch. My mother appeared behind him, her hand on his arm. The treatment, she said softly, will it save our daughter? The plea in her voice made my chest tight. 8 years of silence, of pretending I didn't exist, and now they needed me. But looking at Olivia in that hospital bed, I knew none of that mattered. With aggressive treatment, yes, but she'll need to stay in the hospital for at least 2 months. The restaurant. Forget the restaurant, my father interrupted. Whatever she needs, whatever it costs. I bit back a bitter laugh. Now he was willing to put family before the restaurant. I've already contacted the hospital board, I said, returning to my professional tone. Given the unique nature of the case, they've agreed to let me temporarily transfer my practice here to oversee the treatment. You do that? Olivia asked, tears in her eyes. After everything. I looked at my sister, remembering the little girl who used to sneak me extra garlic bread during dinner rush, who cried when I left for college, who watched silently the night our family fell apart. You're my patient, I said simply, and I'm your doctor. The rest doesn't matter right now. But of course it did matter. It mattered in the way my mother hovered anxiously during rounds, in how my father would stand in the doorway watching me work, in the awkward silences when we found ourselves alone together in Olivia's room. Each day brought small challenges, explaining the complex treatment protocol to my family, dealing with their questions and fears, maintaining professional distance while treating my own sister. But it also brought tiny moments of healing. One evening, as I was reviewing Olivia's charts, my father cleared his throat. The restaurant, he said quietly. We had to close it temporarily. First time in 4 generations there hasn't been a Martinez serving dinner. I looked up, expecting accusation in his eyes. Instead, I saw something that looked almost like pride. But there's a Martinez serving, I replied, gesturing to my white coat. Just in a different way. He nodded slowly, understanding passing between us like a current. 8 years too late, but perhaps not too late entirely. The treatment was brutal. Olivia fought through painful procedures, through days of nausea and weakness, through moments of fear when it seemed like she wasn't improving. But slowly, gradually, her condition began to stabilize. 1 month into the treatment, as I was checking her reflexes, she grabbed my hand. That night, she said, her voice trembling, I should have stood up for you. Should have said something. I kept my eyes on her chart. You were 17, Liv, it wasn't your responsibility. But I knew you were right. About Nana, about everything. I was just scared to admit it. For the first time since arriving at the hospital, I let myself really look at my sister. Not as a patient, not as the daughter who'd stayed, but as the little girl I'd left behind. We were all scared, I said softly. Maybe we still are. She squeezed my hand, and for a moment we were just sisters again, sharing secrets over plates of pasta after closing time. But there was still a long way to go, both with her treatment and with healing the wounds that 8 years of silence had created. As I left her room that night, I wondered if saving my sister's life would be enough to save our family too. 3 months after beginning Olivia's treatment, I stood in her hospital room reviewing her final test results. Her nerve function had improved significantly, her symptoms were under control, and she was ready to be discharged. So, I said, trying to keep my voice professional despite the emotion threatening to break through, you're officially in remission. Olivia burst into tears, and Marco hugged her tightly. My parents, who had barely left her side during the entire treatment, both started crying too. I maintained my composure, focusing on explaining the follow-up care instructions. You'll need monthly checkups for the first year. I continued, handing Marco a detailed care plan. And you'll have to be vigilant about any recurring symptoms. Sophia. Olivia interrupted, wiping her eyes. Put down the chart and come here. Before I could protest, she pulled me into a hug. For a moment, I stayed stiff, maintaining that professional distance I'd worked so hard to keep. Then I felt her trembling, and all my defenses crumbled. I hugged her back, letting myself be her sister instead of her doctor for the first time in months. You saved my life, she whispered. You saved me even after we all turned our backs on you. I pulled back, wiping my own tears away. That's what doctors do. No, my father's voice came from behind us. That's what family does. I turned to face him, surprised by the rawness in his voice. He looked older than ever, but somehow softer too, like these months had worn away some of his hardness. Sophia, he said, his voice breaking. I was wrong. So terribly wrong. My mother stepped forward, taking my hand. We both were. We were so caught up in tradition, in what we thought was best for the family, that we couldn't see what was right in front of us. The restaurant, my father continued, it was never about the food. It was about taking care of people, making them feel at home, giving them comfort when they needed it. And that's exactly what you do, just in a different way. I looked at my family, my sister alive and healing, my parents finally understanding. Marco holding baby Isabella, who had spent so many days in the hospital playroom while her mother fought for her life. The restaurant, I said carefully. How is it? Closed, Olivia replied. We couldn't manage it during the treatment. But Marco added, smiling, we've been thinking about some changes when we reopen. My father nodded. We want to convert part of it into a community health center, partner with local doctors to provide checkups and basic care for people who can't afford it. Like Nana. I stared at them, speechless. This was more than acceptance. This was them embracing my path, incorporating it into our family legacy. We'll need a medical advisor, my mother said tentatively. Someone who understands both medicine and the community, if you're interested. You don't have to decide now, my father added quickly. We know you have your practice in Boston, your own life. We've lost the right to ask anything of you. I thought about my life in Boston, successful but solitary. I built it that way, throwing myself into medicine to fill the void left by my family's rejection. But now, looking at them, I saw a chance to have both worlds. I could consult remotely, I said slowly. And maybe come down some weekends to help set things up. The hope that bloomed on their faces made my heart ache. Really? Olivia grabbed my hand. You do that. On one condition, I said, looking at each of them. We talk about everything. No more silence, no more pretending the past didn't happen. We deal with it together. They agreed immediately, and for the first time in 8 years, we sat down as a family and really talked. About that night, about the years of silence, about the pain and regret on both sides. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when old hurts threatened to reopen old wounds, but we pushed through. 6 months later, I stood in front of Martinez Family Restaurant and Wellness Center for its grand reopening. The old checkered tablecloths were still there, but now they shared space with medical pamphlets and health education materials. The wall of family photos had been updated to include pictures of me in my white coat, my research publications, and a special tribute to Nana. Olivia, fully recovered and glowing with health, handled the restaurant side while I coordinated with local medical students who volunteered at the clinic. My parents moved seamlessly between both worlds, proud to tell customers about their daughter, the doctor, who saved their other daughter's life. Dr. Martinez? A young girl tugged at my coat during the opening celebration. My mom says you help people get better. I knelt down to her level. That's right, and you know what? So does everyone here. Some of us do it with medicine, some with food, but we all help in our own way. Sophia, my father called from the kitchen. Stop working for a minute and come try this new recipe. I named it after you, pasta alla dottoressa. I laughed, remembering how he used to say my medical dreams were a waste of time. Now he was creating dishes inspired by my career. That evening, after the guests had left and the clinic had closed for the day, our family sat around our old table, sharing pasta and wine like we used to. But now there was something new in the air, understanding, acceptance, and a deeper appreciation for what family really means. To the new Martinez legacy, my father raised his glass. Medicine and marinara together at last. We all laughed and clinked glasses. As I looked around at my family, Olivia healthy and happy, my parents finally proud of both their daughters, little Isabella playing under the table, I realized that sometimes the hardest choices lead us exactly where we need to be. I still run my practice in Boston, but I come home regularly now. Home to my family, to our restaurant-turned-clinic, to this beautiful blend of old and new traditions. And every time I walk through those doors, I'm reminded that healing comes in many forms, sometimes through medicine, sometimes through food, and sometimes through the simple act of coming home and being accepted for exactly who you are. The Martinez family legacy continues not just in serving perfect pasta, but in helping and healing everyone who walks through our doors. And in the end, that's what both medicine and marinara are all about.